Oh,
Well, Jim can't join us, but
you mean the general?
the great general, the general,
Okay. Yeah,
the
we
general.
were supposed to
Yeah.
do a podcast yesterday with the general, but unfortunately it did not happen. So what was the problem?
Well, he's changing jobs right now,
Okay.
and he's been interviewing. He's an accountant. He's a very high level accountant, and the company he's working for right now works him very hard and expects him to work on weekends, and he's only able to do job interviews on weekends.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's been having to live this double life where he tells the company he's working for he's sick or he can't do it, he's got to do this. He's been making up these lies week after week after week to try and avoid working, and then hurry back on Sunday to work really hard on Sunday to make up for all the work he didn't do on Saturday. And it's been very stressful for him. And he finally got this new job, which is going to involve him relocating across the country to the state of Indiana.
Oh wow.
And it's going to be in the countryside in a small town. He's very excited about it. Unfortunately, he's going to have to break his lease in his apartment in Atlanta, Georgia. And that, it turns out, is going to involve, I guess the laws allow for the company that rents the apartments to charge him for every month of the lease that he's not going to be there. There's no, a lot like where I live and a lot of places I've lived, you can pay like 2 months rent to break your lease, and then you're free of your rental agreement.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess where he is, they basically, they can get all the money for the entire lease even if you leave. So he's looking at quite a substantial loss because of all the months he has left on his lease. It's like $10,000 or something. And so he was trying to deal with that, and he's got to pack up all his stuff in his apartment, and the landlord wants to be able to show the apartment if he's going to leave, so he has to clean it. And that meant it was another Saturday that he wasn't working at the job that he still has, and so then he had all this work he had to do again on Sunday. So he was miserable, but he's got a good discipline. He embraces misery, and he knows that it's going to lead to great things.
Yeah. So he's basically going to Indiana just for the job, or are there other reasons why he's leaving Atlanta or why he's going to Indiana?
Well, kind of like you and me, the city life is not really a very good place, and I think I've always wanted to get back to the countryside or a smaller community to live in such a place. Of course, there's its own issues in those kind of places, but in any case, getting out of the city, and this is an opportunity for him to get out of the city.
Okay.
And it will mean living in, the place in Indiana is going to be very, very normal, very, very American, very Midwest American,
but
nothing exciting.
Yeah, I get that, but for example, I think I'm as a European, I work a little bit different. For me, when I go where, like within Austria, I always consider if I know people there already. So because I think you moved to Dallas without knowing anybody there, and so it's quite interesting to just leave and leave everything behind and start basically a new life. But of course, I understand the rural life qualities he will get is a nice reason to go there.
Yeah, I think it's part of. I think we've discussed this before. It's like when you travel a lot and you live in a lot of places, there's a negative side to it, which is that you become very disconnected to any one particular place, and the result is you're just a nomad. And I guess the culture we live in today, it thinks travel is really cool and going all of these places is really cool, but it's not that cool. You know what's really cool? To feel at home and to have good friends and to feel comfortable. And those are all the things that you give up if you decide to live a life of travel and dramatic change.
It's interesting that you say that, because at the moment, I have a very, not a very normal life. My life standard here in Vienna is much lower than than the typical Austrian mid-30 male has. But I'm living quite a normal life here, so I'm working a lot. But jobs which I like. I'm dating women, particularly one which probably considers me already her boyfriend.
My God,
and
really?
But
When did this happen?
just the last few weeks. But the most interesting thing is I don't have any plans right now to go somewhere, which is quite enjoyable actually, because I don't think that I have to save money for my next trip or for the next adventure abroad. And I feel actually at the moment I'm quite satisfied not to have to think about things, organizing, preparing, saving for the next plan.
Well, there's a peacefulness that comes from that, where you're actually happy in your place and you're not thinking about the next place. That seems like a pretty good feeling to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I have that feeling either. I don't really want to go anywhere right now.
Okay. So
I don't.
So you like Dallas? You like driving forklifts?
No, I don't. I don't like Dallas that much. It's another city. I want to get out of the city, but the job I have will allow me to transfer anywhere I want in the entire United States to any place that needs drivers. And most of the places that need drivers are places that no one wants to go because everyone wants to live in a big city. And the result is I can go actually within an hour and a half of Marfa, Texas. And Marfa is this place that's intrigued me for many years. It's in the lower elevations of the Davis Mountains that separate New Mexico from Texas, right on the border there, north of El Paso. So it's just above Mexico as well. And Marfa is this artistic place. Anyway, I can work though within an hour and a half of there at a town called Fort Stockton, and it would mean I wouldn't have to drive a forklift anymore. I'd get paid a lot more. I'd be just driving a truck, and it'd be a great
long distances again, or is it like shorter distances?
Yeah, well, I'd be home every night.
Okay,
I'd be home every night or every morning, and not living in the truck. I wouldn't be living in the truck. It's just out and back. Okay. 5 days a week, and I make, I'm making twice what I made when I was driving for Schneider. I mean, you could easily make well over $100,000, and then the cost of living is very cheap there. So you have nothing to spend your money on. So it would be an opportunity to eventually build a cargo container home in the Davis Mountains, which is kind of this dream that I'm working on. I think it would be a good place for it.
I never heard of these mountains. How's the vegetation there? Is it dry? When I think of Texas, New Mexico, I always think of these dry deserts.
Well, it is. West Texas is like that. It's rolling hills of no trees and just scrub and dust, and it's like the cowboy movies.
Okay.
But when you start getting closer to New Mexico, the elevation goes up. That's where Marfa is, and I think Fort Stockton though is still on the lower elevation, so it's right at the base of the Davis Mountains. And you get up in the Davis Mountains, it's beautiful. Everything changes. The vegetation and the climate, it's much cooler. And it's a national park for the United States, the Davis Mountains.
Okay.
A beautiful place. But one of the other advantages I view it as having is right there at the Davis Mountains in New Mexico is the beginning of what we have in America is public land. So it's land that's owned by the federal government.
It's cheap.
No one can buy it. It's not for sale,
okay.
And anyone can use it. You can go on the land. You don't have to tell anybody. And in the western states, there's quite a bit of this public land. And this public land actually has a corridor that goes all the way to Canada. So you could you could really walk onto this land and just walk all the way to Canada from the south to the north, without even crossing anyone's property.
Ah, okay.
And you could hunt and fish the whole way. You know, it's something that very beautiful that America has. Trump is actually trying to get rid of a lot of this public land and make it private, so people can, look for oil and take the copper out of the ground. Unfortunately, but it's yeah.
So you better start walking soon.
Yeah, I gotta enjoy it. I gotta enjoy it before the drillers come. So yeah, I'm excited about this.
Okay,
I'm excited.
So this is
that.
actually a plan you have, moving there soon.
Yeah, I think next year.
Okay.
I think I want to put this plan into motion next year.
Yep.
But in the meantime, though, I have my nephew is coming from France to go to attend a college.
Yeah, I heard it on
San
one
Antonio.
of the podcasts with the general.
Oh yeah, so he's coming, and he's going to be here in a couple weeks. I think he's going to stay with me a few days.
Show him some American culture.
Yeah, well, he is an American, but he hasn't lived here since he was about 7 or 8 years old, I think. And my brother's going to be coming too, and I haven't seen my brother. Oh, when did I last see my brother? 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He's in France and he's playing his music, and yeah. Anyway, so my brother will be here, but it's interesting. I talked to my brother on the phone, and I realized my brother doesn't know anything about America anymore. He didn't really know about getting he was going to get my nephew a phone card to be able to make calls from like public payphones. I said, you don't need to do that. You could get a smartphone. And he's like, really? I said, yeah, of course. Setting up bank accounts, like all of these things have really changed since he lived in the United States, which was, now it's probably like 10 years ago. It's a different world, and he doesn't really know. He can't really advise his own son what to do.
So your brother, who lives in France for a couple of years, he thinks that America is behind now in terms of technology.
No, he just doesn't know.
Or maybe he remembers, or he just thinks it still works the way he remembers.
Yeah, I think he thinks that it works like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And France is a little bit behind as well. And when you don't really know how it works in the country you were in. Even when I came back from South America, I was pretty clueless about the technology that existed. I didn't really know. I was still thinking things were like they were in 2008 when I was last there, and it was 2013. No, 2000. Yeah, because even then I was living in Alaska. I was totally disconnected from America. So when I came back to Texas, I hadn't really lived in America since 2008. So it'd been 7 years. It's a different country.
Yeah. Yeah, you should definitely look into the technology EPUB. Your future books, they need to be on open file formats.
Yeah, I'm actually taking them down, and I'm going to only publish. The Human Side Press is only going to publish physical copies, in very small quantities.
Okay.
I'm studying right now bookbinding and how to use the Adobe program InDesign for book design. Because what I want to do is use a laser printer, really high quality commercial laser printer, HP Indigo.
What happened to the hand print? The idea with the hand print?
Yeah, it's just going to be too expensive.
Okay.
It's going to be too expensive and it'd take too long. I can print up all of the pages of the book very, very quickly if I can perfect the file format with InDesign. I just give it to the printer. They print it all up on paper that I choose. And then I can go and bind all of the books by hand, sewing the pages together and gluing them, making the hardcovers, putting the covers onto the hardcovers. It's quite a beautiful process. And a historic process that hasn't changed since it was discovered, 500 years ago. So I want to do it in that old style, but the inside of the book would be done with a laser printer.
And which stories or books do you want to publish?
Well, the first one I want to do is the
extended version of Home Depot.
No, that's coming. That'll be number 2. The first one I want to do is the Knut Hamsun poems translation, and my plan is to release them at the same time. I don't think I can do that. I wanted to release. My idea is to release a book that is more well known alongside a book that is not well known. So my own books would be not well known ones, and the Hamsun and the Shalamov poetry. These would be the well known books. But at first I got to learn how to do this, book binding, and I got to learn how to use this Adobe InDesign program. It doesn't seem too difficult. I think I can learn how to do it, but I got to buy some tools. There's all these old tools that you need to make books. It's not a huge problem, and in fact, there's a couple of good places here in Dallas that I can go to. I'm going to go this afternoon to talk to this lady about paper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I'm hoping by the end of the year, the books at least I'll have one book ready, maybe close to 2.
Yeah,
and I want to get the website up, have these podcasts on the website.
You have to be quick, because recently I read an article that like physical books, printed books, in terms of the revenue of the books industry in America is only 50% anymore. So 50% is digital already, and it's growing every year. So the sooner you print your books, the better for you. But
well, no, I mean, not the better for me, because I'm not trying to make any money.
Yeah, that's true.
I have a great advantage, is that I don't give a fuck. I'm just making shit just to make shit and fuck with people and have a good time. That's what I'm doing. And I also, though, I know that, from 1500 in Gutenberg and the first books that were ever made, they're still in existence today. I don't know where EPUBs will be in 500 years, but I do know that if you make a beautiful book, chances are it's probably going to be around 500 years. This transition into digital everything, I think there's going to be a backlash. I think it's coming even right now. And I think like these millennials who are into records and buying up old records and using record players, they're the first wave of this backlash. And this backlash will eventually lead to people wanting books again. And perhaps people disconnecting from social media and having more time with which to read a 200-page book. I think there may be this movement happening. I don't know. It's just a feeling.
I don't know either. Probably it's not even wanted anymore that people are educating themselves by their own. So there's some interesting examples in the past in Germany, but also there's this beautiful book Fahrenheit 451, where they burn books. I don't know. Maybe there's some little bit of truth in this book. But we will see. Books are definitely not as important anymore, unfortunately, to people than they used to be, which is quite understandable because there is so much more media which people can consume nowadays.
Yeah, well, they call it content now.
Yes,
people are content creators. Content is so like, what the hell is that? I don't make content. I make fucking genius work. I don't do fucking content, man.
Okay. Yeah.
Content is like what you put, like you fill a bag with something to make it look full, or you fill a glass with something to have something in it. That's content. I mean, genius is something else. That might appear every 10 years, every 20 years.
Yeah, but
that takes a lot of time.
But you're totally right. Most people don't create good quality stuff. Most people create content nowadays because this is what people want, probably. I was thinking about this actually and talking with a Colombian friend, and she said it's very interesting actually that the population is as high as never before, but there is not many, or compared to the past, compared to our history, there is not many geniuses. You know, for example, writers. There's not many writers that will probably play a very important role in 300 years. But 300 years ago, there were a lot of, or some writers, which still play an important role. But nowadays, there's so many more people that create content but don't create quality work.
Well, it's the same. It's the same across all the fields. It's not just writers; it's musicians.
Yes,
it's,
exactly. Yeah, that was just an example.
Painters, all of the creative arts. What were your thoughts on this, and what were your friends' thoughts?
To be honest, I don't have an answer why it is like this.
I have an answer.
Okay, what is it?
I have an answer. It's funny you bring this up because I've been thinking about it quite recently, and I need to think about it more. You know evolution with Darwin, right?
Of course.
Well, it's been popularized as being the survival of the fittest, which actually Darwin never said. It's like always the strongest survive, and that's sort of justification for the survivors. They say, "Oh, I'm the strongest, that's why I survived." And so they deny the idea that there was any luck involved or, other forces. It had to do with the individual that was strong that made it and was able to reproduce. Well, Darwin actually talked about another element of evolution, which is less well discussed, and it's the idea of it's called genetic drift. And it's the idea that you get these incredible and very different genetic and creative formations and populations which are isolated. So the idea is that if you look perhaps 100 years ago when the world was less connected and less global, you had a lot more isolated populations. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have all these ways for people to share ideas. Mm-hmm. And it was as a result of not being able to share ideas, not being able to procreate with people outside of your culture and maybe your race or your little community or whatever it was, that you had a chance for like something really incredible, but you also had a chance for something really fucked up. If it's like a brother and a sister have sex, you're gonna have a retard. But that's the danger of isolation. But it's also the possibility of greatness, like something totally unimaginable would happen. But when you connect everybody together and you have everybody sharing everything, I think what you get is a very conservative culture that has less of a chance of doing really new things and exploring new places. And that's at a genetic level, but that's at a creative level as well.
Okay.
So you're going to get I feel like globalism, the future of globalism is like there'll be no more blonde hair and blue eyes because those are recessive genes that are easily overcome by dark eyes and everything. All of these people that look like me will disappear, and the future will be this androgynous mulatto future where everyone, it's the idea of equality, total equality. I think it's actually a possibility that we could get there. But total equality will be a boring place to live in. It'll be so fucking average, man. You'll have no geniuses. You'll have nobody who's really, really good or really, really bad. Yeah, but you'll have eliminated all of the extremes.
This is just physical appearance. It does not make any difference how people look like.
Oh, I agree. I agree. The physical stuff, but the physical stuff is a marker, though. It is a marker, because we know that if you have blonde hair and blue eyes, you come from an isolated community because those are recessive genes. So your genetics has pretty much been isolated to a degree that it's harder to tell with someone who's darker because they could be a mix of a lot of things. But if you're blonde hair and blue eyes, we know that your family history has not intermingled with some, Southern Italian family at some point. We know that just from your look. But that, of course, your look has nothing to do with creative stuff. I'm just saying these things are markers. That's all they are. But it gets back to the central point, though, is that we don't have isolated communities in the world anymore. There's no isolation. And that is a bad thing for creativity. Isolation is a very good thing for creativity.
Okay. I mean, people are still very creative, and there is so many creative people nowadays. It's just I was just surprised that actually these creative people probably are not. I mean, maybe it's not even true, but this is my theory, or this is what I thought. It was surprising that these creative people are not able to produce something great as creative people did in the past. That was very interesting, actually, the conversation I had with her.
Yeah, but I definitely agree with that. I look at I look at American music. Obviously listen to a lot of American music. Most people do. And one of the interesting things is like the last great musical expression was rap music, and it came about when I was young, so I felt like I was a part of it. But rap was very interesting because it came from poor ghetto youth, black youth living in these urban areas, and just working with very limited instruments and production capacities to come up with this party music. And they weren't doing it for money. And it seems like in all the creative acts that have been very important, those are necessary features. You need to be isolated, you need to be poor, and you have to have given up the idea that you're going to make money with something that you're doing.
But I mean,
the great painters were like that. The great writers were like that. I mean, James Joyce never had the idea that he was going to make millions of dollars. Capitalism needs to be eliminated from any creative act. And that means that you live in poverty, for one, probably, and you accept that, and you're comfortable with that. And that also means that you're very isolated, which is a good thing, which gets back to this evolutionary idea of genetic drift, where you can create something very, very different because you're not connected to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of similarities between probably the first poor people from the States that created or produced rap music, and the ones that made jazz and blues much longer ago. But I cannot imagine that the first poor rap musicians will be remembered as the great jazz musicians. Even in maybe 200 years. People
I don't know.
will still listen to jazz, but not to rap. Or
look, there's some great rap music that I grew up on that I still remember very, very fondly, and it affected me, I think, in the same way that early jazz affected some of those people that had lived in the 50s and 60s. I understand you can criticize rappers and say that musically they weren't at the level of some of the great jazz musicians, but that's not the point, really. The point is, like, when you make some new music that no one's ever heard before, that I mean, look at rap, like technologically what it did, record scratching and sampling. This has now become a dominant idea in the culture. People, like memes that people make, like on the internet, this is all sampling culture. I think rap culture has been a very dominant cultural force in the end. Everyone is derivative of everyone else. There's that element to rap. So yes, rappers, I don't put them on the same level of musicians as the great jazz players, but in terms of the revolution of rap, I think it was just as important as jazz, maybe even more important.
Okay.
But I think in 200 years, people will still know who Public Enemy was. They'll still know the first NWA record. Straight out of Compton, crazy motherfucker named Ice Cube. I mean, that's just classic stuff. I mean, maybe it's classic because I grew up on it, but I think it's classic. I think it's funny when I see these millennials that they're into that. It's like, oh man, really? These kids like that. Yeah, I don't know. Andreas.
Yes, me neither. I don't know.
Well, we'll never know what'll happen in 200 years.
Yeah,
but...
which is good.
Yeah, but it is interesting though to look at the last 200 years and to say what has lasted. Like if you look at what was popular 200 years ago, and then you say, what do we remember of 200 years ago? It's usually very, very different. You know that? The popular writer or the popular music, it may not be the same thing that is viewed as the best of 200 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting though how a culture, because history is always being written by and interpreted by the culture that you live in, and so the culture we live in now, it says this is good and this is bad, and so it rewrites history in its own way to emphasize the things that promote its own values. So you get every age and epoch has a different way of looking at whatever has happened before. Like for instance, in Israel, they're not allowed to perform Wagner.
Okay.
It's prohibited because Wagner was an early Nazi. He was an anti-Semite. Mm-hmm. So imagine if you're a musician in Israel and you're growing up and you never hear Wagner. You just don't know anything about Wagner. I mean, Wagner's pretty important.
As a musician, yes.
Well, right, yeah. Not as a social theorist. So who's this girlfriend?
No,
when did this happen?
No. I
in Austria?
I did not say that she's my girlfriend. I said she considers me as her boyfriend. There's a huge difference.
Okay.
Right,
So you're not as keen on her as she is about you.
No, I like the fact that that she thinks this way actually, but as a person, I don't know how you feel because you're in a long-term relationship, but it has been quite a while for me that I was in a long-term relationship or in a serious relationship actually, and these experiences abroad, not having a proper home, I think I am not capable anymore of having a relationship, or it will cost a lot of energy to be able again to have a relationship again. I think it changed me quite a bit in terms of a potential partner, all of my experiences.
What do you mean? Do you mean by that that now you see life and the world so differently that it's very hard to connect with another person who hasn't had those experiences?
Maybe to a certain degree, but I think I just accept the fact that I'm a person that is probably misunderstood by most people, that I'm a lonely person, and it's most of the time I'm totally fine with this, but then again, I said at the moment I enjoy very much that I'm seen as a potential partner for a few women, which is okay.
Well, isn't that at the same time it's you feel good that they view you that way, but it's also a burden.
I mean, I'm scared actually. Maybe to let them know, or that maybe I will have to hurt them and tell them, okay, I'm not this kind of person that is the perfect pick for a relationship, because I'm not this average guy that wants to live the typical Austrian life, having a girlfriend, maybe a family, the same job, and going on vacation to Italy or Croatia or whatsoever once a year, and going to the gym, things like this. I need some changes probably in life. But as I told you before, I feel I'm very happy at the moment that I don't have any plans. There's nothing concrete on my head where I should go next. I mean, I still have one big plan. I want to sail across the whole Pacific next time from South America to all the way to Asia. But this is something I'm not really thinking about at the moment. I want to do it, but I don't care if it's in 5 years.
What about if we have a plan together? I have a plan, and I think you can help me.
What is it? Walking all the way to Canada on public land?
No. That I can do by myself. I want to get a little sailboat in Miami and do the Grand Loop, which is you go from Miami to the Gulf of Mexico to the Mississippi, and you go up the Mississippi, and you go through the Great Lakes, and you go through Lake Erie and the Erie Canal, and you connect back with the Atlantic, and you go back to Miami, and then you sail the boat.
Okay.
It's called the Grand Loop.
Yeah, you told me about this idea a couple of years ago already. I have no idea what kind of boat you need for doing this.
Somebody told me about it a couple different times. People have told me about it. So I'm not sure about the boat, but
I think you met a couple in Ecuador or something, which told you about.
No, in Colombia. No, in Colombia, this older couple told me about it, and that was where I first got the idea. And then I met a guy in Alaska who owned a hostel in Anchorage, and we got to talking, and he also was talking about doing the Great Loop or the Grand Loop. Mm-hmm. And I guess you have to do it soon because they're gonna
build a wall in the north as well.
I don't know what they're gonna do. They're gonna fuck it up. They're gonna fuck it up, and you won't be able to do it anymore. They're gonna do something. Yeah. But I don't know anything about sailing or boats. But you're a skipper.
Yeah, but so I'm a bad one. You don't want to put your life into my hands. Trust me.
No, but this would be a very simple boating. People don't die doing this. It's very easy. You're going to be along the shore.
Going on rivers, I think it's is very complicated because there's a lot of traffic on rivers and currents.
Yeah, the Mississippi. Yeah, there's currents. Yeah. The Mississippi is known for a lot of currents, but this trip is not considered to be the most difficult. A lot of people with no experience do it. Mm.
Yeah, it sounds interesting, but we definitely need if we do this, we definitely need a person that is that understands the problems of a trip like this much more than I do or you do. So, it's true.
Who the hell would that be?
I don't know.
I don't want to have that some stranger on the boat.
Yeah, but there's probably some listeners out there. I mean, you have a million followers already on your channel. Maybe someone is a professional skipper of riverboats.
Yeah, all the million followers. Yeah. That's right. I'm sure there's one.
But I want to go back to this, to the quality of the relationship I have now with women, and I just realized actually the fact that I don't have any plans that I'm leaving anytime soon also changes the quality of the relationship with a woman, because in the past, when I was in Colombia, in Southeast Asia, or wherever, these women normally knew that that's a temporary solution, and now it's different. I think, and this makes them think that I could be their proper boyfriend, which I like very much.
Is the girl an Austrian girl?
No, I'm not dating Western girls.
So where does the girl come from?
Montenegro.
Oh, that sounds very, very exotic, very interesting.
Just from the Balkan.
Is she a Muslim girl?
No. Montenegro is not a Muslim country.
Okay. So she's like a Serb.
Yes, exactly.
Slavic?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. And so she speaks German as a second language?
Yes, but with something I totally understand. Her German is not perfect, which is having an effect on her self-confidence when she's talking. So we speak in English mostly.
In English?
Yes.
Really?
Yes,
Wow.
English is an international language which is spoken even...
An international language?
Which is spoken by people whose mother tongue is not English.
Wow, that's very interesting.
But it's also...
you...
I don't know. I mean, you speak Spanish a lot of times to your wife. How do you feel when you have to use a language which is not perfect in a relationship, in a romantic relationship?
I feel I usually don't mind it, except when we're fighting. I feel it a huge disadvantage when there's a fight going on.
But don't you ever think that you could express not when it comes to fights, but something else whatsoever? Don't you think that you could express something much better in your language? Because this is what I think many times, how I feel many times when I'm doing the podcast with you, for example.
Yes, I continually feel when I speak Spanish or when I spoke French and when I lived in these other cultures that I was sort of an idiot. I could not really express any of the nuance, the subtlety of what I wanted to say. I was very brutal. I was very barbarian in this very crude way of communicating because I just didn't have the words. And I always felt like I was being misunderstood. And I always feel like I am also misunderstanding. I'm not also getting all the nuance from the other person. Mm-hmm. And this is the problem with traveling and living in other cultures. It gives you the sense that you think you know a lot more than you do because you're able to speak this other language, but you're not able to speak this language with real fluidity and feeling. That takes like a lifetime to get to that point.
For me, I think it's impossible.
It's impossible.
I will never be able to speak English in a level that what I consider as almost perfect. No way. I'm
still learning the English language. I'm still all the time. I'm reading and I'm writing, and I'm learning new subtleties and nuances of my own language. That's taken me a lifetime to get to that point. I'm stupid if I think I could do that in Spanish as well or in French as well. No, you can't do that. You can't do that.
And do you think, coming back to relationship, do you think this has an effect on the quality of the relationship if both partners are not able to communicate in the same language, in the same level?
Yes, I've decided that it has. And I've decided that you really don't know the other person as well as you think you do.
I think
you have an image. You have this image of the other person that's a translation of what you think they are into your own culture and language. And they're doing the same thing to you. And I think it's a sort of a lie that you live, both of you live, and you've projected this vision of the other person, and at the same time though, I understand that in terms of like divorce rates, some of the most successful marriages are between cultures. So people have communication issues. Maybe it's better not to be able to communicate very well.
Okay.
Maybe that's better for a relationship.
Well,
I don't know.
You said the divorce rate is lower when people from different cultures are married?
Yes, much lower.
Never heard of this.
Yeah, at least in America, it's much lower. Yeah. Yeah, so I don't, but I'm not the average person who's married someone from a different culture. I've done it now twice, and it seems to be that the second attempt is also going to fail. I think I'm going to get another divorce. It's just not working out. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but I would say my first marriage was a very European French girl. We shared a lot of things in common, a lot of books, a lot of intellectual things, artistic, aesthetic things, creative things. And I think that was a very strong basis for a relationship. And we had a lot of great times together. And it fell apart for different reasons. I think a lot of them were my own problems and my own neuroses, whatever. And it led me to making this decision the second time to marry someone who didn't have the background in books and in music and in all these things. And instead it was someone who there was a huge part of me that I know that she couldn't understand, that she would have no capacity to understand.
But
and a lot of it was
causing
because
problems?
It was
that you're different in terms of passions or interests.
It's not, yeah, but it's not so much that is that it's if you're with someone who doesn't speak your language and you speak, but the difference between you and this Montenegro girl is that I was speaking her language and living in her culture, and I gave up and lived my own life of writing in English all in secret because it was beyond her, right? So a lot of the things that were most important to me, she didn't understand, and she still doesn't understand. The life that's lived even here in Dallas is a very Latino Colombian life. You know, she's unable to make that I see it now that she's unable to, even though she's improved her English a lot, she's unwilling to culturally accept more parts of American culture. Not that you should become American in any way, but at least you should be open to these things. It's part of learning and living in a place. And I was very open to all that when I lived in Colombia. And I lived as a Colombian. I mean, I didn't speak English, and I did everything the Colombian way. She is not making that same effort. And in fact, she is very critical of American culture. And that leads to her being critical of me as a representative of American culture. And I find that a little distasteful because of all of the, not just in terms of me supporting her and putting her in a position and giving her opportunity, but you know, you shouldn't shit in your own house when someone else is paying for your house and doing all that. You should be appreciative of that and do something and take advantage of the opportunity and not be so attacking and critical.
No, I don't know. I mean,
there's a lot of.
I think that the Colombian culture is definitely healthier than the American one. So maybe it's for a person that comes from a culture where things work differently and maybe in a better way. Maybe it's hard for this person to live the life of another country compared to like you as an American who lived in Colombia and adopted Colombian lifestyle. I don't know. I think I could understand her.
Yeah, but that's really the point, though, is that when I lived in her country, I adopted 100% the way of life, and she is not doing the same thing.
Yeah, but
in fact, she's revolting against it.
Yeah, but you're critical towards your own culture as well, very much, and probably she is not very critical towards the Colombian culture.
Well, she's critical of Colombian culture too. She is. She's critical of everything. That's part of her problem.
Okay.
So it's a very negative person.
Okay.
Very negative.
Okay.
always attacking somebody or something. There's always some issue, and yeah, it's not good. It's not healthy. You know, at some point in life, you just have to say that this is just how things are. This is how people are. And I'm old enough now where I realize you don't change people, you don't change cultures, these battles are just irrelevant battles to have. You just accept that that's the way it is, and you find your way to get through, to get done what you need to get done, and there's nothing more to it. I mean, there's no fight to be had, which is going to have winners. There are no winners, and she's someone, you know, she believes a lot of, unfortunately, she believes a lot of what's being written about in the press about America being a racist place, and she sees racism everywhere. She thinks I'm a racist. She thinks my mother's a racist. I mean, I have, it's just shocking the things that come out of her mouth. I'm like, this is just not true. I don't know where you're getting this. But she repeats these things so many times that she believes them, and it's a mental issue. I think it's a problem.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, the same Colombian friend told me, she's a psychologist, or she used to work as a psychologist, and she said the concentration of bipolar females, Colombian females, is extremely high, and other psychological issues are very common as well, much more common than in other countries. They did some studies there. So Colombian women many times tend to have some issues.
You know, it could be because of genetic drift.
Okay.
You have, you know, Colombia it's one of the good things about Colombia, which is that because of all the violence, political violence, the narco stuff, and all the Marxist revolutionaries and FARC, it's isolated the country. So you have the different regions which have very, very strong cultural identities. But what you end up getting there too is that, like I was saying earlier, you could get very cool creative things that can also happen, but you can also get disastrous things that could happen. Mm-hmm. You could get something like a high percentage of women are bipolar or something, but you could also get a high percentage of people who are extremely creative and making great art this new way, or music. Mm-hmm. And I think I think you get you have a lot of cultural beauty in Colombia, but perhaps it comes with the flip side, which is emotional and psychological issues.
Right. Yeah,
and that could be as a result of this isolation, the isolated parts of the country, which can only interbreed and intermingle with themselves without communication. That's the way it was for a long time.
Yeah, I mean that was only 2 generations, right? I mean, when did
no, more than that.
No, but
the violence in the country. The violence in the country has been going on since the Spanish were there.
Okay.
It's been at least 400 years. 50% of the Colombian population died when the conquistadors came.
Yeah, of course.
And then you had the influx of slaves, and then intermixing of slaves with the population, and then you had political violence, at least since the beginning of the 20th century, which was very extreme, and it still continued up until the 21st century. Even 10 years ago, Colombia was considered to be almost a failed state. Mm-hmm. So you had at least 4 generations which were very isolated, and most likely more than that, because technology and travel were almost impossible. So it's been a very isolated country. That's why you get it's a beautiful country, because you go to all these regions, and every region is extremely different. They speak the same language, more or less. They've got some different slang even. It's very, very interesting. It's wonderful. But I think there's a flip side to it. And perhaps this bipolar stuff is a flip side to it.
Okay. Yeah, I had very good experiences with Colombian people, Colombian women, very relaxed people, easygoing. Funny things though, my boss in Colombia, he's American, and he gave me one advice. He said, "Don't pull out the knife. Just go to the hospital. They have a lot of experts there, taking out taking out the knife." And
what?
because he was knifed by his former Colombian girlfriend, and he pulled out the knife, which caused some problems. So if you just leave it there where it is and go straight to the hospital, it's better. It's he told me it's a very common issue, a very common thing to get knifed by a girlfriend.
Jesus Christ, now you're scaring me. I don't even want to sleep at home. I don't want to sleep in my house anymore. Oh my God. I was worrying, I was worrying about that. I was worried about getting knifed. I started to think about that. My God. I realize I need some peace. I need some peace. I haven't had peace. I've been busting my ass to provide and to try and get ahead, but I've been carrying someone who's, as a working class man in America, it's hard enough. But when you're gonna have to also make money for somebody who's not making any money, feed them, try and live in a nice apartment, it's challenging. It'll almost kill you,
No, I think you're still doing fine.
I'm doing great. I can still buy jazz records and drink alcohol.
Yeah.
The important things.
What does a man need?
Yeah, well, you know what I need? You know what I need is more time to work on my projects. I burn up a lot of energy, working the jobs, and then I go to the gym, and that burns up more energy. And then I have a drink and I pass out. And then I wake up and I have another drink. I listen to jazz records, and then I got to go back to work again. And there's never been any time to do any writing.
Yeah, maybe the drinking should not be a priority. I know you enjoy a glass of wine when you listen to your records, but if it's not only one glass of wine, maybe it's a problem, and then you cannot do the writing anymore.
Yeah, but you should be able to have like a half bottle of wine and still be able to live your life. If I get rid of a half bottle of wine, even a full bottle of wine, my life shouldn't be altered I shouldn't have to get rid of that. I should still be able to drink a full bottle of wine and live a fulfilling life.
Yeah, I don't know. I will never understand the desire to drink alcohol. Actually, I mean, I drink. I enjoy a beer, a glass of wine. I don't drink much. I don't have the. I think I could never be addicted to alcohol. I could have a lot of problems in my life, but I would not get addicted to alcohol. That's for sure. I smoke cigarettes.
But in your family, do you have any?
No, not at all.
Alcoholics.
No,
there are no alcoholics.
No, nobody drinks in my family.
Oh, well, that's why. I mean, here's a good example of what I'm talking about with genetic drift. You've inherited, whether you like it or not, that you just are not interested in alcohol. It's quite the opposite.
No,
for me,
my grandparents, I'm sure my grandfather, he was drinking a lot. So I don't know. It cannot be a question of one or two generations to become this kind of person in terms of preferences and desires and whatsoever. I don't know. I think it has nothing to do with my family that I don't like to drink very much.
But it sounds like it has something to do with your family. Your parents don't drink, right?
Yeah, but then again, there's a lot of people in my family that never smoked cigarettes. um, my life is completely different than my my
That's
family
true.
members.
I get,
I don't know.
and also you've traveled and you've done all
Yes,
these things. But I think that's the point, though, is that there are some things which you may share, and then some things which are totally different. I
maybe.
I I see a lot of similarities between myself and my parents, but I see a lot of dissimilarities, which are, I'm very, very different.
Your brother is very
But I
different too,
think
right?
my brother,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, uh, yeah, he's different. He's different. I mean, it's hard. Look, it's hard to say if he's really that different. I think that people through their experiences, they end up in situations which they either fight against those situations or they accept. And by accepting them, it might not be a bad thing for them. It might end up being a good thing for them. And I think my brother has ended up in a situation which he's accepted, and it's a very good thing for him. But it's made him seemingly different.
Mm.
But when I talk to my brother, I my I realize, and I know my brother, and I feel that my brother is my own blood. He shares my blood with me. There's a very strong connection that can't be denied. Despite that's the interesting thing. Despite all my experiences and all these foreign places and all the stuff I've done, and all the things he's done as well, and he also is a musician, so he's got a very different way of looking at the world and thinking through music.
Yeah, he's an artist too. Yeah.
He is, but it's very different. I don't understand it. Like when he talks to me, I don't understand it. He talks about music, and I don't know what he's talking about. I know that he's saying something important, but I just don't understand it. But at the same time, I connect with him, even during those conversations, at a blood level. There's something family that's very important, and even your country and all of that. I'm in Texas now, but Texas is still America. There's still some American things here, but it also is Texas, which is very foreign to me. I'm kind of a foreigner here, but I do feel more comfortable here than I do in Colombia, for example.
In terms of what? In which situations didn't you feel comfortable in Colombia?
Well, I'm always uncomfortable in Colombia because of the way people look at me. Before I've said a word of Spanish to them, they think I'm a mono, gringo mono.
Yeah.
And that comes with that comes with a whole set of stereotypes and presumptions about you. But suddenly when I start speaking Spanish, then they realize, whoa, he knows Spanish. He's speaking Colombian Spanish. He's speaking Spanish with an accent from La Guajira. Who the fuck is this guy? So it changes everything at that moment. But I don't like being looked at as this gringo mono, mochilero, living in a hostel somewhere. That's the presumption that's usually made, and that I don't like being looked at like that, because I don't objectify people like that. I don't stereotype people like that when I see them.
I don't know. I don't share these experiences. I always felt welcome. No stereotypes. Of course, I knew that people knew that I'm definitely a foreigner, but I did not come across any bad situations, I would say.
Well, I didn't have bad situations, but there were
annoying situations.
But a few times there were these moments where I had the feeling that someone believed I was someone that I wasn't. They thought I was some stupid American gringo, or they were underestimating me, or they thought they could trick me, and and then suddenly they realized, oh, that wasn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess that happens anywhere if you're a foreigner and you're not in your own culture. But the difference, though, is that in Texas, if I go somewhere and I do something, maybe Texas people know, oh, he's not from Texas. They know that. They think, oh, he's probably from the north. But I'm an American like they are, and they're not thinking something else, right?
Yeah,
The
I
stereotype.
just
There's no other
realized I should
stereotype.
have talked to locals or to people we came across much more when I was in Texas. Next time when you live in this smaller town somewhere, then then I want to interact a little bit more with some locals there. Interested, curious how
Well,
people are there.
part of the problem is that I have no interaction with the locals.
Yeah.
I am I could live anywhere right now. I don't know anybody. I don't have any friends. I don't
Yeah,
talk to
you know
anybody.
the
I don't do anything.
only people that we talked to were actually Colombians or Latin Americans that came to this small party in your apartment.
That's right.
Mm.
But that gets back to my point, which is that Inés is more interested in living a comfortable Colombian Latino life here than she is living a Texas life.
Maybe
She's not open as much,
maybe you have to
right?
support her and make some American friends. I mean, if you're not willing to have American friends, of course she's looking for Latin American friends. Don't you think so?
Well, I did once. I met it when she was back in Colombia. I met a guy
Because I can guarantee you that she got along with me very well. And I mean, I'm not American, but I'm Western, so I'm probably much more similar to Americans than a Colombian is. So probably
well,
it's
no, she never said anything bad about you, but everybody else she's criticized.
okay.
She's attacked all of my friends.
Really? Okay.
Even though she doesn't even know them.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, my friend in Portland, who I was doing the trucking thing with, I mean, she said outrageous things. She's like, if I came to America and I met him, I'm sure he would try and want to have sex with me. I said, what? What are you talking about? You don't even know this guy. You've never met him in your life. What are you talking about? I mean, it's just ridiculous things. I mean, it's just, and in her mind, this is what happens. She says that, and then she thinks it again, and she thinks it again, and she thinks it again. And at that point, it's become true that even though she's never met this person's tried to have sex with her, tried to seduce her, and he's a bad person. And so then whenever I would bring the guy up, she would talk about him as if he'd done something to her, even though she's never met him. I mean, it's just insane. I mean, it's just there's a pattern of this, okay, right? Like Nina had some digestive problems, and she was when she was going to the bathroom in the apartment, and she doesn't usually do that. Really, it rarely happens, but she had diarrhea. She couldn't stop herself. And Inés blamed it on me. She said that I had been abusive to Nina, and that was why Nina was nervous and was doing this. I said, I haven't done anything to her. But she repeated it. It's interesting. She repeated it 3 times, and I just thought it was nonsense. But by the 4th time, she believed that it was true. She believed that these things had happened. And so now, after even months later, she would bring up my abuse of the dog as something that I'd done, which had never happened. It never happened. But because in her own head she'd repeated it a few times, and I hadn't. I mean, how was I supposed to defend myself if I've never done this? I just thought it was ridiculous. Come on, don't be stupid. But now it becomes truth. So all of these strange stories that she's these attacks that she's made on people, she does it a few times, and then it becomes the reality. So this thing about racism, this is all together. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But this is now for her all true, and it's at this point, like, how am I going to argue with any of this? It's like, come on, okay, I beat the dog, I abuse the dog, I'm a racist, I'm all these negative things. All right, it's time for you to go back to Colombia. Time for you to leave, bitch. I had enough of this shit.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, you see me. I work really, really hard, and if someone works that hard and is that tired, and they come home and and they have to listen to shit like this. I mean, come on, man. Fuck it. I don't need this in my life. Why the hell am I working hard to have this in my life? I don't need it.
I mean, arguing and fighting, you don't want even when you're not working hard.
Well, but arguing and fighting over about nonsense and lies,
exactly.
Things just are not true. This is not true. You look at someone and you say, are you that fucking delusional? Are you that out of your mind that you believe that this is true? You know, I mean, this is just part of a longer pattern. You know, she accused Miguel of all these terrible things in Bogota, and is a reason why I stopped talking to Miguel. But now I begin to believe that she was just these things were the same sort of attack she's doing on me now. She just did them on Miguel.
Oh, that would be too bad, because actually I was planning to visit Miguel. I mean, I did not make it to Bogota anyway, but I would have loved to see him again. But because of the stories you told me, I thought, it's probably not a good idea to see him.
Well, I mean, he was getting a little crazy. In truth, Miguel's getting a little crazy, and I think he was he's a little fucked up. But I don't believe he was as fucked up as Ines was describing. I mean, the things that she said to me, that he said about me and about her. At the time, I thought, why the fuck would he say that? That's terrible, and it made me really dislike Miguel. But now I believe that these things are probably not true. They were in her head. I don't believe that these things were true. Mm-hmm. So I think the truth of really who Miguel is and what Miguel had said is probably somewhere in the middle. And he's not nearly as bad a person as maybe I presented. He's not bad anyway. Miguel's a good guy.
I know. I mean, but I know him.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think I think women get fucked up in this modern life. I don't think it's good for them. I don't think they're made for it.
I don't think it's good for anybody.
But I think men are a little better equipped.
Yeah. Just recently, I was reading an article, because unlike you, I'm reading a newspaper. The people, especially women, that follow these fashion blogs and food blogs and all this kind of stuff, they get depressed very easily, because there's so much pressure on them, how to look, how to eat, all this kind of bullshit. It's horrible nowadays.
Well, there's that whole thing, that Instagram culture, where people are presenting themselves in these pictures, in these places, as living this fabulous life. And I think women are very susceptible to feeling inferior to other women. And it puts a lot of pressure on them, social pressure. They feel that social pressure more than men do. You don't see men like saying, oh, I'm in Tahiti today, tomorrow I'm here on this place, da da da.
Oh, there is definitely some men that do this.
Yeah, but they're gay. They're not straight. Yeah, there are men that do it, but
no, but it's more women.
Their followers are all girls. Other men don't want to see they're not going to follow some man who's doing I'm on the beach today, tomorrow I'm in New York, tomorrow I'm there in Paris, da da da. I don't know. At the same time, though, I don't understand, because I'm too old, perhaps, why anyone would want to tell anyone that they were doing all that, especially a bunch of strangers. And also, I've been. I mean,
this is
to all those
somehow
places.
Understandable for me, because you need some attention you probably did not get in your family, or I don't know. But what I don't understand is why you follow people that you don't know. This is just
follow.
This is just.
But even the whole idea of followers, like I'm gonna follow somebody, that like on Instagram, I have an Instagram account for the Human Side Press. I am following 0 people because I can't submit myself to following people. Like, how could I follow somebody? Like, who the fuck would I follow? I mean, I am following certain people. Like, I'd say Hemingway and Nietzsche and Wittgenstein. Those are people that I would follow. That's the level of person that I would like to follow. But I don't see people at that level. If you're not at that level, I'm not fucking following you, man. I will have 0 followers until someone great shows up.
Yeah. So, speaking of followers, did you get some response or feedback from random followers you don't know in person on your YouTube channel?
No,
the podcasts and all.
There
this
were a
kind of
couple
stuff?
comments.
Okay.
No, there were a couple comments.
Nobody contacted you
was...
and said, thanks very much, Morlin, for
No, they did.
talking about these
great
were... topics with the general and things like this. Because obviously I listen to them, I enjoy them. For the most part, some parts are just too complex for me, too abstract. But so
well, there was some good responses.
Feedback.
No, there were a couple comments that were left. There were very, very wonderful comments. I'm really glad that there were a couple people. One guy up in Toronto. It seemed like a young guy who was early 20s or something, and he was listening and he liked to listen. He was always looking forward to the next podcast. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. And maybe in the future can have that young guy on a podcast or something. I'd be curious to hear what his perspective is on what we're talking about, since he seems to be very interested in the kinds of topics that we're talking about, particularly because he's a young fella, And there was another comment, very, very nice comment, which was very affecting for me, because the guy referenced working class culture and intellectual culture, and said that it was something along the lines of, it's great to see that people who are working hard and doing hard manual jobs are also able, not just able, but putting out intellectual stuff from their own perspective.
Yeah, but
from the perspective of a working man.
It's different with you. You are the intellectual person that became a working class person. It's vice versa.
I don't know. Yes and no. I mean, I had a friend in Miami who kept telling me, "Oh, I used to say, yeah, I'd say, yeah, I'm working class." He said, "No, you're not working class. Come on, why you say that?" And he was like a rich kid from New York City, and he went to private school and all that. He thought I was like him. And I said, "Dude, you're gonna have to realize that I'm not like you. I always went to public school, and I grew up in Michigan, in a poor area, and people worked on the factory line. That's how I grew up. And eventually I went to the suburbs of Chicago and went to high school there. But that came later, and then I went to college. So, I wouldn't say I'm working class. I'm not born from the working classes. My parents are educated, but everyone in my family has had to work hard, and at times they've worked with their hands. And they've never put down working class people, and they've never privileged intellectual people, and they know both worlds. Mm-hmm. So I think I come from that. I'm respective of both, but I do not consider myself to be working class, and I don't consider myself to be upper class, intellectual class either. I've lived between both worlds, but I've never had a corporate office job. I've never done that. I was a futures trader, which is like being a professional athlete. It's just like having a little skill and you make a lot of money, but you have no boss. You have nothing like that. So I don't know. I don't fit in very well in terms of work history anywhere in America. And for that reason, that's why I have to be a truck driver now, because I'm not able to get a real job.
Yeah.
Also I went to Bulgaria. I was trying to go to Bulgaria instead of working in a bank in New
I
York
know,
City.
this is how
You
I got to
remember
know you.
that? I think that's the thing that was the moment where you're like, oh, this guy's all right.
Yeah, because I had a very different expectation of what kind of person you are when I heard your voice in the kitchen in this hostel in Cali.
Yeah, but what did you think I was when you
No,
when you when you
I saw you with your long blonde hair. I just thought, okay, this is probably the American guy that comes to Colombia to do a lot of party and fuck Latinas and things like this.
really?
Yeah,
That's what you thought?
and the first thing was you offered me a beer. Um, there was this English girl I remember in the kitchen as well, and then you just told me, okay, you're hungry. You go to this place where they have the best arepa de choclo in town, which are horrible. Arepas are horrible anyway. I hate them.
Yeah, but the arepa de choclo is
No,
good.
I don't know.
With the cheese?
I don't like this stuff.
That was good.
Um,
Arepa is terrible though. That little white
Yeah.
biscuit they put on your oh, that is inedible.
yeah,
Terrible.
Yeah, it is
Terrible.
Yeah, and then you told me that you're a very very educated person that just wanted to ride a bicycle to Bulgaria instead of working for a Goldman Sachs or whatsoever. And I like these characters that think differently, that don't follow the normal path.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Well, I told you before it was because of you that I published those first books.
Yeah, the Home Depot stories.
Really, it's because of you. And the Home Depot stories will hopefully eventually be coming out this year in a beautiful hand-bound edition.
An extended version, right?
Yeah, I'm working on.
Because I think you told
probably
me,
a few stories.
You told me about another colleague you had there, and I enjoyed this story about this person very much as well. I don't remember what it was about or his name.
Slick Nick.
Ah, yeah, exactly, yeah, Slick Nick.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna. No, I'm gonna. I have the stories. There's a couple, probably 2, maybe 3 new stories to add to it, and I need to write a new introduction. I don't like that preface that I wrote. It's just too. It's just shit. I need to write something. I need to write something that tells the reader about where I was at that time in my life. I'm not sure I can explain everything, because the whole story is that I was coming off being very successful in New York as a futures trader. Was drinking a tremendous amount of alcohol.
Yeah, you felt miserable, right? You needed to change something because otherwise you would have died, maybe.
Yes. Oh, I was on my way to death.
Mm-hmm.
The money that I had left, I could have continued along that lifestyle for probably another like 2 or 3 years. And that could have killed me. It really could have killed me, because I had enough money to be able to do it. I had enough money to be able to really go out in a blaze of glory in Miami. And Miami is a place made for going out in a blaze of glory. It's very easy. And I was well on my way. That's why I regret what happened with my first wife. I think she had her problems, but I think if it hadn't been for my problems, we could have worked things out. But that's life, that's life. I was never ready to have the money that I had from futures trading. And I also didn't realize enough about life and the world to be able to know that, the decisions I was making were bad decisions. now I'm much smarter, I think. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I still don't know. It's better to think that you don't know.
Yeah, we are almost at 1 hour 30 minutes. What do you think of getting
Yeah,
close,
let's shut it down.
getting closer to the end?
Let's
And
shut it down right now.
we have to do one with the general one day.
We will.
Tell him not to work so hard. It's not healthy.
No, after August 3rd, he's going to be able to do a podcast with us.
Yeah, I will have much more time by mid of September.
Well, it sounds like then middle of September we're going to have to do a podcast. It's going to be like 2 months away.
Next 8 weeks, I'm extremely busy pushing wheelchairs.
Why are you
doing some events? So the neighbors are getting along much better with each other.
What do you mean events?
No, I have a couple of jobs. You know, one job is I'm doing some outdoor events, some small parties for people living in these in these big
catering.
It's more playing games and quizzes and trying to resolve problems with the people that live there. You know, it's some kind of integrational work. It's some kind, because it's a clash of different cultures. It's working class people, which are normally conservative or probably oriented towards
racist.
Not racist. Necessarily racist, but
I'm kidding. Yeah,
but there's some problems which occur.
So who hires you? Who hires you to do that? The government of Austria?
No, it's the person that runs this event agency is a very good friend of mine, and he's hired by a non-profit organization that is building these houses for the city government.
So this is about integrating foreigners with working class people?
It's not necessarily about foreigners. It's about that people that live there in these big apartment buildings, that they can talk first of all to the people that are responsible for running these or for taking care of these buildings, but also that they get along with each other much better. You know, the atmosphere should be good if you want to live somewhere, and we are helping to improve the atmosphere there.
So this is like there are these events that you're a leader of during these events to help people communicate or something.
Yeah, you know, because people have to play games together. And
is that what you get them to do? Like
we're creating some games that don't exist, and they have to play together, so they get to know each other. They talk together when they see in the buildings and I don't know, the parking lot, and they probably greet each other and then they talk to each other, and this forms a healthier environment to live in the long run.
You know, you Western Europeans are very progressive people. This is wonderful. None of that would ever happen in Texas. They don't give a shit. You're going to live segregated.
No, but I mean,
you're going to live with your people.
But for example, these events are also used for politicians to get votes in future elections.
So there's a political aspect to it. The politicians are involved.
The non-profit organization is definitely a socialist organization, and the city government, of course, is also a socialist, still in Vienna. It's one of the last, how do you say in French, bastion?
The bastions.
Yeah. Of the socialists in Austria, because as you know, the political situation in Austria is
very, very right wing now.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So Vienna is still very progressive and left, but the rest of the country has gone right.
I can imagine that it will change in Vienna as well.
Hmm. Yeah. You know, it's very interesting. I was reading about, and I know we need to end this podcast, but I was reading about Dr. Asperger, who is apparently Austrian.
Mm-hmm.
He came up with Asperger's, which is for the autistics.
Mm-hmm. Like Sheldon Cooper.
Who?
You know, there's this American sitcom called Big Bang Theory. Very funny. I can recommend it.
Never seen it.
Yeah.
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. He's an autistic?
He's this kind of autism.
Yeah. Well, apparently Asperger, who's this Viennese doctor who came up with, he basically invented autism. It's been discovered that he was a part of a euthanasia program for children. And like he was having all these children killed, like because they couldn't contribute to, because he was apparently a Nazi, Asperger.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very scandalous, or it may be about to be very scandalous, that the word used to describe children as being on the Asperger or having Asperger's syndrome or spectrum or being autistic, the guy it comes from was a Nazi who was euthanizing children, Austrian children who didn't, who were problematic. It's a shocking new development. When they discover like a very intelligent person was a Nazi or something.
Yeah, but it's not an excuse. A lot of knowledge, medical knowledge, comes from very bad people. Not only the Nazis.
That's true. There's been a lot of bad medical knowledge that.
Yeah.
Oh, a lot of great medical knowledge that came from people who did terrible experiments on people that shouldn't have happened, that never would have been allowed to have happened. And they let them happen, and now we know things, right?
Recently I was reading an article about Japanese, or many articles about this magazine about Japanese history. In one it said that there was this horrible Japanese doctor or scientist. It was a scientist, and he created all of these biological and chemical weapons. And he did not get punished after the Second World War by the Americans because the Americans used or took a lot of the knowledge he gained and maybe used it or will use it or whatsoever for their own purposes.
Wow, isn't that the nature of history?
Yeah, exactly.
You could be on the right side of history during your lifetime, and then 100 years later they condemn you. I mean, I don't know if it's happening in Austria right now, but in America, a lot of the universities are tearing down statues, and they're tearing down.
Of whom?
They're renaming buildings because they say this guy owned slaves. This guy was a racist. It's like this revenge of history, and they're rewriting everything and eliminating people that did certain things. I don't know if it's happening in Austria.
No, I think
it's right?
It happened already in Austria.
Oh. Well, it happened perhaps because people were Nazis. They went through a period where they're like, oh, this guy was a Nazi, we have to remove him.
I mean, first of all, not a lot of streets were named by people that did something great but still were Nazis, probably. I don't know. Every once in a while you read something like this, that some people want that the name is changed of a certain street, but it does not happen very often. I don't know.
Well, it's happening.
And
it's happening quite often.
And I think And I think when it comes to American slavery or the history of American slavery, this is something that that was never really talked about. You know, about the Nazis in Germany and Austria, because we or these two countries were actually the countries that lost the war. So we, or like my ancestors or the people that lived in these countries, that had to deal with the sins Germans and Austrians did. Americans, like white Americans, of course I know there is the North and the South, but still a white person probably was never really punished for the sins other white people did. You know what I mean? So
Well, yeah, but I don't know if that's the case today, though, because there's a whole movement in America about saying white people have privilege. And it's sort of equating your white skin with perhaps being a slave owner and being always having the advantage in this country and being the dominating force. And it's a little bit insulting to me. Even Ines has said this about me being white in America means that I was a slave owner. I said, no. My family comes from Sweden, and we came here in 1905. That was well after the period of slavery. There were no slaves owned by anyone in my family.
But then again, a white person,
I was an immigrant.
A white person cannot deny that white people, like many other cultures and races in history of mankind, did a lot of very bad things.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with my family who came from Dalsjut in Sweden, who are a bunch of farmers and blacksmiths.
But
like, why would anyone equate those people with horrible people who are unrelated by blood?
Maybe because
some other
because
part
you
of the world.
as a white American, maybe you still have more privileges than a person with a different skin color, different last name. I don't know.
It's impossible to prove. It's impossible to prove any of that. It really is. The privilege thing. It seems to be an argument made by losers.
No, I think there's definitely some truth in it. I'm sure if you want to achieve something, that you can achieve something. It does not matter if your name is not sounding typical American, or if your skin color is not Caucasian or white. It's still possible, but maybe it's a little bit more difficult.
I tell you what, my idea is this: if you are average or a little bit above average,
in terms of what,
and you're black, and intellect and ideas and creativity, you're a little bit above average, right? And you're black, and you are white, and you're a little bit above average, and you're blonde hair, blue eyes. Guess what? White privilege probably works. But if you are fucking black and you are a badass motherfucker who is creative of beyond belief and cannot be stopped, white privilege can't stop you, man. You're going to go to the top.
Of course.
You're going to be fucking great.
Yeah, of course.
And if you're white and you're that same kind of guy, you're going to go to the top. But the people who argue about white privilege are the slightly above average people. They're the people that history shits on. They're people that history doesn't give a fuck about. Because you don't fucking matter. But in this world that we live in of average people with no great differentiation between people who are a little bit better, they can argue that it's because of my skin color or it's this or that I can't achieve what I should be achieving. Because the reality is that these slightly above average people think they're being denied something because they're not being told they're the greatest ever. The reality is, you're not the greatest ever. You're a marginal fucking creative person. You're not that great. That's the reality.
Yeah, but it does not.
But
it does not matter if you're a great person or just an average person. a person should not benefit from, or should not benefit more than others because of some privileges based on skin color.
Yeah, but I mean,
and it doesn't matter if you're just an average or even below average. It should be the difficulty to achieve something should be similar.
It's so
or the
marginal
same
though.
for everybody.
Look, if you're black and you come up with the most incredible fucking new idea, you're going to be a fucking winner.
Of course,
I'm telling you.
Of course.
But what we're talking about with this white privilege or like this racism stuff, we're talking about like slightly above average people who think they have a great idea, but they don't have a great idea.
No, it's not. It's not even having.
They have an average idea.
A great idea. It's just having a random normal office job, and maybe as an Austrian person with the typical Austrian name, maybe your salary is a few hundred euros higher a month compared to a person that comes from with the same qualifications, same knowledge, same experience, same skills, with a name that sounds a little bit Eastern European or even Muslim. That's definitely the case, I would say. And this is something that is not fair.
So that's the case. Okay, so that's the case. But you know what? I don't give a fuck about those people. Those people don't change history. They don't matter. They're losers. They are nobodies. I look at history as being decided by the great people. And if you're going to reduce the great people and attack the great people, then we got a problem. But that's the problem here, which is people are applying this very low-level racism idea or an equality idea, and they're bringing down the ability of great people to do great work. That's the problem. Yes, if you want to argue about like low-level office workers not being compensated at the same amount, yeah, you've got an argument. I understand you've got an argument, but who the fuck cares? These people are losers. They mean nothing.
No, people are not.
They mean nothing.
Nobody means anything. Basically,
if you told me tomorrow that black truck drivers are going to be compensated 2 cents more per mile than me, I'd say, yeah, that sucks. But guess what? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to drive for an hour or 2 hours longer than those black truck drivers, and I'm going to make more money than they are. I'm going to find a way to make more money than they are making me. So fuck them. If that's the system you want, fuck them. I'm going to wait. I'm going to work the system to my own advantage.
I want that everything is fair. I don't want that there is competition which is based on the wrong things. Competition should be.
Well, I agree. I agree
on quality or wanting to be better.
I agree,
than
but
others,
I'm more
not competing with the name or with the skin color.
Oh, I agree, but it's inevitable that's the way it's going to be.
And it does not matter if a person
that's just the way life
is. Below average or a great person that will change history. It's just people.
Hey, if you want to make a lot of money,
chances.
Yes, but if you want to make a lot of money and you want to be successful and you want to believe that you are this great person that you think you are, then fucking do something that no one can say no to. If you do something that nobody can say no to, then you will be compensated and you will be important. But I'm sick of hearing about all these like average whiners who are saying, "Oh, the guy working next to me is a white guy. He's making a penny more an hour than I am, and that's racism." And da da da. Fuck you. You both are losers. The white guy and you are losers. All of you are fucking losers. Fuck you. Fuck you. I don't want to hear about your shit. Do something.
No, but maybe these people don't want to do something. Maybe these people just want to be compensated.
Exactly.
The same, and
you go.
This is totally fine.
Exactly.
A person.
Everybody just there's this whole thing like people's happiness is all based upon if they make as much as their neighbor. Or they make more than their neighbor. And it could be that somebody living like a mile away is making twice what they're making. But they don't know that guy. But they know their neighbor. And if they can make a penny more than their neighbor, then they feel like a success. And I think that is the pettiness that we're involved with all this racial stuff, all this racism.
No, I disagree. I think a lot of these people don't want to earn 1 penny more than the neighbor. I think they want earn as much as the neighbor. And this is understandable in my opinion.
No, they want to earn more. They want to earn more. Don't ever think for a second that they want to earn the same. No one wants to earn the same as their neighbor. They want to be better than their neighbor. That's what it's all about.
Then probably I'm different.
There's never like... No, I don't think that that's true. In America, everyone wants to beat their neighbor. Have a nicer Corvette, to have a bigger house, to have a swimming pool.
Okay, yeah, this I understand, yeah. This I agree with.
You're only successful if you're better than your neighbor. Success is only based upon the guy living next to you. It's not based on someone living 2 miles away that you don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, even people that don't aim to become one of the great people deserve to be compensated in a fair way. That's my opinion. And
well, I'm sort of a Nazi in this sense.
Yeah.
I would say that only the great people matter, right?
No, everybody does not matter. That's my opinion.
There's a lot of shitty people, man. The world is now like 10 billion people.
Yeah.
It's going to go up to like,
how
many billions of people? What do you mean? All these people are equal? Are they fucking equal?
Yeah,
Fuck no. They're not fucking equal.
Nobody matters. That's my opinion. I did we talk about the diving accident I had in Burma in our last podcast? I think so, or maybe not.
Yeah, but I need to edit that.
Okay. But anyway, when I was floating on the ocean for a couple of hours, I realized, oh my God, I don't matter at all. Nobody actually matters. We are just individuals without having any purpose for this world. And it does not matter if you're a creator of art and books, or if you're just working in a factory. Nobody makes a difference. Maybe there's some few political leaders that make a difference.
No, not political leaders. Not political leaders. But there are people that make a difference. But you know who I think makes the most difference are people that we don't know about. Like the guy who discovered how to use fire. There was one fucking man. Well, it could have been a woman. I don't know. Who figured out how to harness the power of fire. And that allowed for human beings to cook meat. It allowed for human beings to go into the caves and domesticate the caves that were formerly inhabited by these big animals. They were able to get out of the dangerous open space in the night where they were sleeping, and so that now they had new homes. Fire was totally transformative, and I think about all these ideas that have no name attached to them that are the most. I mean, the guy who invented the wheel. There was a guy who fucking made the wheel. It wasn't two guys. It was probably one guy, right?
Yeah.
One girl. I don't know. So I think all the most important shit was made by people we never know about.
Yeah, true.
Hey, let's wrap this up.
Okay.
People are coming home.